Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Pick them up at artistfirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at artistfirst.com. And now, your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, D-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And tonight is Scream Night. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes screaming.
There are days when you just feel like doing that, folks.
Today's the day. Aren't you folks in for a treat? I don't think I could scream for 45 minutes.
No.
But 40 minutes, I could. You know it. Take a breath. Little lozenge or two. No, tonight is not Scream Night. Although this is in the areas of the world that celebrate it, this is Halloween week, and people do a lot of screaming this week.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But we're not going to scream this week that we know of.
We're endeavoring not to.
We're endeavoring not to scream. We are keeping it in. So, but we are going to do one of our favorite things. We're going to do some definitions tonight. Tonight is definition night, or rather, this is the night where we're going to talk about not being defined. And I think there's a great quote, and I think we should lead off with it because we have what's going to go up on the website is going to be an abbreviated quote because it was a couple paragraphs long. And do you have the unabridged quote? Let's go with the unabridged quote from one of our favorite philosophers and all-around good guy, Eckhart Tolle.
All right. Give up defining yourself to yourself or to others. Isn't that a command? Mm-hmm. Give up defining yourself to yourself or to others. You won't die. You will come to life. And don't be concerned with how others define you. When they define you, they are limiting themselves. So it's their problem. Isn't that a wonderful thought? Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or a role, but as the field of consciousness, presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. Eckhart Tolle.
That last line is kind of the crux of the whole thing. A definition. Okay, let's back up one little bit. People spend most of their lives trying to fulfill a definition. Early on, you're handed one. Don't you want to be whatever? Don't you want to be a good boy? Don't you want to be a fireman? Don't you want to be anything? Don't you want to fulfill my definition of you? I see you as this. Here's your role. Here's your function. Here's your goal. And in that sense, it's your definition. If you accept it, if you allow it to enter. And this is that whole thing, Margaret, of the gates. We can talk about it a little bit, but just briefly, there are certain gates into your presence, into your consciousness. And one of those gates is the ear gate. It's the hearing gate. And the words that are spoken to you very early on are oftentimes these definitions of what you want, what you are wanted to be, what you should be. Who you are. This is who you are. And then it gets inside and starts to have its own little echo chamber. It tells you this is who you should be, this is who you are. And you can lose those things when people when all too often people start to identify, or the definitions become their identity, and then you could lose it. Somebody could take that away. You're no longer handsome. You're no longer pretty. You're no longer rich. You're no longer, whatever role you were fulfilling or whatever goal you were going for. And all of a sudden they feel very wounded or very almost destroyed. People feel sort of like a sort of a death when their definition is somehow removed from them, because it's become far more than it should have ever been. And what Tolle says, that last sentence, you can lose your definition. I'm not handsome anymore. I'm not this, I'm not that. You can lose all those things, but you can't lose what and who you are, your being, your presence. And if you understand that, no one can ever take anything away from you, because to take your being away from you is to utterly destroy you. And even then, you only can take the physical, which is, if people are trying to control others, they can control the physical. Yes, they can imprison you, they can do all kinds of things to you, they can take your life. But if you understand who it is you actually are, the vastness of your being, and dictators and tyrants throughout the centuries have learned, you cannot imprison the being. You can only imprison the physical. And you can do whatever you want to the physical, but the being remains. And this is the superpower of realization. When you realize that who you are is not the physical, who you are is not the definition, you're uncontrollable.
Well, the statement, you can only lose something that you have. A possession is a thing.
Yes.
Concepts are things. But being is not a thing.
Right.
So when you realize that there are concepts of yourself that you can lose or try to change, and that's what we are given as we start in this life. This is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be finding out who you are, defining yourself, and changing, evolving as you go. And that's a very interesting concept, actually, because if who you are is eternal, what is it that's actually changing? If your existence is, what is actually being worked on to transform or change? It's not your being state, but how conscious you are of your being state. It's a very interesting concept.
The essence of you, the true essence of you, has to become, is what it is, right? It's just what you said. It is what it is. I'm sorry, I want to cut you off.
Do you actually comprehend the vastness of who you are? That divine, that divine spark that you are is without definition, truly, without boundaries and without definition. So if you are that which is the divine spark, you understand that you can't limit yourself to, well, I'm a person who likes this, the color pink, and I'll only have everything that's pink. Well, that's very cute, very much a kind of surface thing, but that's not who you are. Like someone tells you, you're only good if you do this. And you sit there and you go, well, good for who? Is it good for me? Is it good for you? This is where the relativism comes in.
Mm.
And you learn about relativism in this world. In fact, I think that's one of the primary purposes being down here, is to understand your boundaries and to be able to understand you are not your boundaries.
Right. And that's a great segue, because definitions are boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mentioned, I wrote up a little bit of this too, just as definitions are like boxes. And people, let's say in the best light, well-intentionedly, or with good intentions, with which the road to hell is paved, but with good intentions, people hand you definitions, little boxes. And Margaret just said something very interesting. Is it for my benefit? Is it for my own benefit? Well, maybe a little bit. But I think a lot of the boxes that people hand you are for their benefit. And what I mean by that is beings. Well, beings are vast. They're uncontrollable. They're in some ways dangerous. They could do almost anything. They're incredibly powerful entities. And if you're not used to dealing with beings, you need boxes. You need to break them up. You need to stuff them into something manageable, or try to. And what you really are doing in the most insidious way, we were talking about, the sort of the most charitable way of thinking about it, but in the insidious way of doing it is you're stuffing a person into a box, actually convincing that person to operate within the box, within your box, within coloring within the lines here, paint by numbers, because that's all that you want them to do. You want them to perform a function, fulfill a role,
Mm-hmm.
become something which you can use and control and don't have to worry about, because it's safe. It's inside the box. It's behind the bars. It's within the lines. It's not something which is elemental and powerful, like fire, or like wind, or like just the incredible presence of a being which can do anything and is vast and infinite. No, that's pretty scary, right? You don't want a being around. You don't want somebody. You don't want something that you have to take note of, that you have to acknowledge the presence and existence of, that you have to wonder about what is it that this being demands of me, my awareness, my compassion, my time. No, you want a box. You want to box them up into something convenient and small and manageable. And
it's interesting, because that means
safe.
Yeah. You are defining your world. You want your world a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the beginning of just thinking about yourself. Everything has got to relate back to you,
Mm-hmm.
and how it fits in the world you want to create. And if it doesn't fit, then we have to correct that. We have to
take steps.
And you look at that and you're like, well, is this really all about you? In other words, especially if you're interacting with other people in relationships, when that happens and there is a need for correction, it means that you are trapped in an ego. This person is trapped in an ego. It's their problem, as Tolle says.
Well, yeah. I mean, the definitions of... So there's two aspects of this, right, Margaret? There's the... when you are given definitions and you start to allow them to come in, they come in through your ear gate or your eye gate or whatever gate, get inside you. And those definitions, those boxes, if you accept them and you put yourself within them, you put some portion of your energy and your awareness within these boxes, and then in essence animate them. You put energy into a box, and the box starts to light up and glow and move around. It's like a little robot. Maybe it's cute in the beginning. Then that box stands up and says, "I am you." And starts to talk.
Yeah,
it starts to assume you are this. You are the box. You are. You have to only do the things that fit inside the box.
It's kind of interesting because I've seen this pattern repeatedly where people will come in contact with you because there's something that you're doing differently that they appreciate and they'd like to learn. But their learning is this limited little, as you say, box or amount of interaction that they're willing to take. It's only this much. And they take it in, and then they turn it around and they dress it up and say, okay, this is the way it's got to be. And, I saw that happening when I was with her. So I know what she knows. Mm-hmm. It's easy. This little chunk that they took, they said, well, it's easy. That's got to be the whole thing. That's what I understand from it. And in their world it is. But in the greater world, when they try to do it, do what you were able to manage and run, they find out that they're missing a great deal. And it's at that point that they're either open to learn more or basically say, oh, well, that's enough. That I don't need anything more than that. Mm-hmm. Next, let me go see what else I can get. Yeah. And I know people who do this, where they're going from one group to another, whatever happens to be in vogue at this point, this meditation group, this group that's talking about different star systems, and another group that's talking about, well, if you do this particular energetic discipline, or, they just hop around looking for some, I guess what you could call it is almost supernatural. In other words, something outside themselves that they know exists, but the funny part about it is they want to reach it through the known, which in the known world, you can't grasp it. So they're thinking, well, I will reach through all these other known things, these other pieces, and I'll cobble it together, and then I'll be able to reach outside of myself then. And it's very interesting because they're building these structures outside of themselves, hoping to touch what's really deeply inside of them.
I mean, that's interesting too. I mean, that's almost a different topic, but
no, it's a definition.
Well, exactly. It's facilitated by these definitions, or by these boxes, if you will. And what Tolle is talking about here is, first of all, seeing the boxes, right? We're seeing that there's definitions or boxes that are given to you. Fit inside this. Put everything inside that. Make sure you only interact within these particular lines, or no one will recognize you. That's what cultures do. That's what sometimes family structures do. That's what the role that you're supposed to play. You're supposed to be this and that, and you don't do this and you don't do that, because if you do that, you're not inside the box anymore, and then you're bad. That's the other.
You're bad, or you're scary.
Or you're scary. I mean, that's the other big box, the good box and the bad box. This is the good box, and you stay within here. But if you go outside, now you're in the bad. You're outside the good box, so therefore you're in the bad region, and you can't be dealt with, or you have to be restricted, or you have to be corrected. You mentioned corrected. So there's those definitions. People will give you definitions. Then they want you to voluntarily get inside the boxes and stay inside the boxes. And then the other one is this is where people define you, and then you start to define yourself. If if at an early age you're given a bunch of boxes and fit yourself into them, you start to accept that this is, these are the boxes. This is the world. This is where I put all my energy. I'm no longer a being. I have to fit in, right? That's the phrase. I have to fit in. And so this is insidious, or rather, it's sort of it's self-reinforcing. The first definitions that you're given then pile one atop the other. First you're this, you're a child, or you're a you have these roles, and you're supposed to do these things to be good, and these things are unacceptable, and this is how we do this, and this is how our culture says, and these are so you get all these tons and tons and tons of definitions. They start to pile up like boxes will, and they start to occlude the being. They start to in essence start to gather a lot of your energy, a lot of your time. They start to talk back to you and tell you that, you shouldn't go outside the box. You have to, this is who you are, and you've spent all this time doing this, and it doesn't matter that you feel like you should do something else. No, we can't waste all that time. We have to stay you want to stay inside that box. And then the other portion of it that Margaret was talking about just a moment ago is that people will from externally will only deal with you through the box. So if they're gonna talk to you or interact with you, they don't want to see you as a being. They want to see you as a collection of boxes. You fit into the worker box. You fit into the employee box. You fit into the functionary box, the servant box. Maybe you fit into the boss box. Maybe you're a very powerful, actor, or the wealthy box. Somebody I have to really be very careful about. But whatever those boxes are, they're safe because they have limits. They're the more you can limit somebody into a box, the safer they appear to be. They don't have this. You know what a box is going to do. You don't expect that a box is going to suddenly jump off the shelf and challenge you with something you can't understand or can't comprehend, or have an insight that's so deep and so incredibly and so incredibly powerful that it ruins, it kind of breaks through the image of who you thought you are, and really talks directly to your being. Oh, you don't want that. You don't want any of those things, because that's scary, and that means that I have to work, and I have to learn, and I have to experience. No, boxes become very comfortable things. We've talked about too, where people will, when they start to have a relationship with somebody else, they don't want a relationship. They want to check off the boxes, right? They want to say, this one has this car and this job and this much money and all the boxes have to get checked off.
The 666.
Right, the 666. Those are different. It's a different. Those are check boxes, but they're still boxes. That you have to fulfill those checkpoints, one after another, and then there's like a score, which is even better. You get to be a standardized box test, where you checked off almost all the boxes, but I'm going to hold out for somebody that gets all the boxes checked. And that's what the definition, that's the relationship box. And so the relationship box are all these other little boxes that have to get checked off. And
it's amazing because it is something that you possess. This is a possession where it's got to be this. And it's not the truth of who you are.
No.
So you can lose all that, but you're not destroyed. That's the most viable proof of what your life is. I think Tolle had also said, the opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. Life is.
Exactly.
to understand, because people, oh, well, life, it's life and death. It's like, no, you mean birth and death. Life is.
You need to define. I know exactly what you're talking about, but the definition is very important here. Why is it birth and death versus life and death? People say, well, it's life and death, but you do it. That's such an important thing. Why is it birth and death?
Understanding that birth and death are just the beginning and an end of a timeline. Begins and it ends. But your life itself, is the process of the interaction of your spirit soul in this time and place. And there is a beginning and there is an end, but it doesn't define what your life actually is. You define what your life actually is. So when they're saying life or death, it's like, no, what you're actually talking about is just death, as you're afraid of what's about to come. Death is on the horizon.
Death is on the line. No, but I like that. But I was thinking just a slightly bit different. Let me put this in front of you. Yes, birth and death are just points. And Tolle uses this lovely sort of analogy of the vertical and the horizontal. The horizontal is existence, is this plane of temporal reality, and the vertical is the being. Your birth is where those two things intersect, and it's not just two lines. It's like if you think of the temporal, the vertical. The horizontal, the whole breadth of the world, the whole breadth of the universe. Your birth is just the entry of the eternal being.
Your spark of the eternal.
Into this temporal arena. Now, that birth is just the first time you enter in, right there.
You're injected.
Your vertical, your infinite vertical you, the being that is you, intersects with this temporal plane for a period of time. So you intersect. That's your beginning of the temporal existence. But you realize, you look very carefully, the whole of you was there before it intersected with the temporal. And if you think of it as something like it's going through if the temporal is like a piece of paper, and you are like a line going through, for the period of time that you're kind of intersecting with the paper, you're drawing on it perhaps, for that period of time, that's your birth and your interaction with the temporal. And then, if you can think of it this way, you kind of fall through, and you leave, and the line stops. The Greeks had the lovely image of the weaver and the line of your life, and the one who would measure and the one who would cut. The three fates. And that was nice because it really gave a beautiful image. But this Tolle's is sort of similar. Your temporal existence, the line that you draw on the world, has a beginning where the pen started, an end where the pen gets lifted. Everything in between is drawing on the page, and you can draw whatever you want. And it doesn't, interestingly enough, if you put it all in boxes, it doesn't look like much. But if you let it just go anywhere, it could be quite a beautiful picture. And people want to keep you from drawing outside the lines while you're here. So, but that drawing is birth and death. Everything in between is whatever you want it to be. If you stay within the lines, if you color only within the boxes, it's going to be pretty boring and pretty safe. But realize that the person, the being, the thing which is intersecting and drawing and experiencing for a period of time still exists afterwards. Still existed before. maybe we'll enter in again and draw a different line on another part of the page. And you could think of birth and a period of time, and then death, leaving and coming back again. But that same being eternally exists. And once you're here, well, all of a sudden people will be throwing boxes at you to color or to keep your pen inside. This analogy is very similar. If you start to identify with coloring in the boxes and staying within them all the time, you don't have much of a drawing to look at the end. You don't have much of a song that you can listen to, or Tecumseh and his song of your life at the end. When you're done, you can look back over the whole picture, or all the interactions, all the notes, all the relationships, and you have quite a tapestry, quite a masterpiece to bring back with you in your experience bank, in your experiential bank. Or you might not. If you've been told to stay within the lines and only color these dots, it might look a lot less interesting at the end of the day. But that's the whole thing. It's what Margaret said. It's 2 points on the page. It's where you started and where you ended. Everything in between is whatever you want to do. The universe is there for you to draw on. And as long as you don't listen to or allow some other force, some other entity to define you, to limit you, to box you up.
It's just convenient for them to define you. And if you're not acquainted with yourself, if you do not have the introspection to understand who you actually are, your being state, then you will follow through on the role that they give you. You're being given a presence on their stage, so you must perform. And this is how you have to perform.
That's a wonderful analogy, because people want you to be an actor on their stage and say the lines they give you and the actions that they want you to take, and they want to be the director and the producer and the audience, and give you applause or boos and catcalls,
right,
and throw peanuts at you or roses. But they want you to dance on their stage.
And it's very interesting, because you have to learn to be aware when someone is casting you into a role. Sometimes there's a unspoken threat behind it, because unless you interact with me this way, I'm not going to let you come onto my stage. I'm not going to let you interact with me. And that is dangerous. Because if you're really aware, you realize what they're asking you to do is to give up contact with all the rest of you and focus in on only these specific points that they want you to be. And that's the only thing they want to interact with. And if you are young in understanding who you are, you'll fall into that until you get to the point where all those things that they said that you had to be fall completely short of the fulfillment that your soul is looking for. People say, well, I want this relationship to fulfill me. But if you're only acting through this 6-inch pipeline of back and forth, when you are this huge, vast ocean, how much of your existence are you actually missing? How much existence is that person missing for themselves. It's a very, if you understand it, it can be very freeing if you allow yourself the opportunity to just look at them and say, well, you don't really know me, but that's okay. Because you can only interact with me on this limited connection. And that limited connection, I don't know if people understand, when you're only operating in this small pipeline, that's where all those feelings of constraint and anxiety and stress and worry will rear its head, because suddenly, wait, you mean I'm not going to be able to be enough because of this kind of relationship? You're only interacting on this small scale.
Mm-hmm.
And your soul wants another soul connection that is vast, not limited.
Mm.
That's all fear. If you understand that fear is the pipeline that they're interacting with you, they make these little narrow pathways of relationship because of fear. They think they're going to control things. What they're doing is ratcheting a real being state down to something that they can only hold in their hands.
Mm.
Very limited.
This is the crux of the whole thing. This is exactly the definition of, or not definition is the wrong word to use here. That these pipelines you mentioned, these constraints. So a box is sort of static, but a pipeline isn't. Things have to flow through a pipeline.
Right.
And so when you interact with another being, another vast, incredibly infinite being, if the relationship is unlimited, then it's infinite. In the sense, okay, if you are a fully aware being and you come into a relationship with another fully aware being, and the two of you are intimate on every level imaginable, and we're not just talking about the physical here, but every level imaginable, you're able to appreciate and experience the wondrous nature of incarnation through the eyes of a being, and realize you don't lose yourself in that. You're still a unique, vast being. The other is still a unique, vast being. You each within you contain a universe, and you trade without any restrictions your appreciation of the other and of the universe around both of you. Okay, that's a relationship. That's something which feeds the soul, feeds the vast being, and it has virtually no limitation. You can do anything, up to and including losing your life for the other, your temporal existence for the other, and the relationship remains. Okay. But most people, I'll say that if you have defined yourself as a bunch of boxes, and you see relationships as check boxes, then each one of those, let's just say each relationship is defined through this pipeline, but it's almost like a straw. And Margaret just said it, you have an ocean on both sides, connected by a straw. You can't get much through that. You can't get a lot of energy. You can't get a lot of flow. You can't, if you were trying to nurture each other, let's say that through this pipeline was the only way you could feed the other, your energy, your time, your concern, your love. Well, here's an eyedropper. I'm going to stuff as much love as I can through that. Not too much. You're not going to share the vastness of the other's appreciation of the universe through a straw. You're going to get a couple of drops. And if all you're looking for is to fill a tiny box on either side, that may suffice. But likely you'll find that both of these vast beings, are trying to interact through these tiny straws, and both are starving. Both are unfulfilled. Both come to see that all the boxes are checked, and yet still there's something that I'm not getting. I don't feel. I don't interact. I feel unfulfilled.
The relationship is unfulfilling because you begin to believe that limited access, that pipeline is just too small for you. This will never fill you.
But you said it also. The reason that the pipelines are there is twofold. The first was that you were given all these boxes, and then within the boxes, people said, well, that's the only way you can interact. This is the pipeline that goes between those two boxes. And you said, very, very importantly now, you said, okay, I agree to that. People said, well, I never agreed to that. You have to. Your will is involved in the creation of every box and every pipeline. And if you allow your will to be subverted and to be suborned by fear, then those pipelines will be as small as possible and those boxes will be as limiting as possible, because fear brooks no... It eschews any form of freedom. Freedom and fear don't go together. Fear wants control. Fear wants things locked down, tiny, slow-moving. See it coming a mile away. Can shut it off in an instant. People have relationships where they say, well, every dime that we own is yours or mine. Every furniture has my label and your label. And when they say, when you don't satisfy every little need of mine, I'm just going to cut you off like that. And it seems like nothing. It's just like so easy. Why? Because all those fears have made those pipelines into the tiniest little brittle things that you can break in an instant and run away. There isn't a relationship. You're barely touching.
Right. It's understanding that you're interacting with each other through this agreed boundary of fear.
Mm.
And what is that, like the prenups that are happening?
Well, yeah, any of that stuff.
Or, to define yourself only by those limitations. You've got to have this much money, and we have to agree on our lifestyle and what kind of place we're living in and what kind of cars we're driving. And it's very much the wall of that pipeline connection. It has nothing to do with the life that flows through it. And the life that you are and has been gifted to you is vast. It's immense. But whether or not you agree to live that way is the question. Because if one of those in that relationship decides that, no, I'm going to live in who I am, as opposed to who you want me to be. And the presence has to do with being in the moment of now, continually. And if you're in relationship, you're in that moment of now with the other. So it takes away that limiting pipe. And suddenly there you are, vastness meeting vastness. Your consciousness, because people think, oh no, I'm going to lose myself. It's like your consciousness, you only concentrated on this small connection point. But your consciousness is capable of encompassing the vastness of who you are.
Mm.
And it can begin to interact with the vastness of the other or the creation that is around you. And there's no room for making lists, thinking it's got to be a certain way. Well, how will I know if I'm living a vastness of life?
Mm-hmm.
You have the grace to be able to live, to see, to appreciate, to observe, to continue.
Mm.
I think Tolle had said it best in this quote. Whenever you interact with people or others, don't be there primarily as a function or a role. The minute you're there as a function or a role, you realize you've limited yourself already, because that pipeline is defined by the function that was designated to you. Like, you provide for me. You know, you're in the family, you provide, I don't know, the income. So the role is you are the husband or the provider. Maybe that's better. And that's a limited pipeline right there. So that's the only way you're going to interact with this other person, as provider, instead of appreciating who this other person actually is. And you want to be appreciated for who you actually are. So don't be in a relationship primarily as a function or a role, but as a field of conscious presence. And being in that field of conscious presence, you begin to appreciate yourself and the other. Because if you are a function or a role, you can lose that. But if you are present, you can't lose who you are. This is Tolle.
Very, very much so. I mean, I remind, as you mentioned, the circumstances of your there's a relationship, and that relationship has certain connections. We've talked about these pipelines, and they work maybe at that very moment. You've fulfilled the provider pipeline and the sex pipeline and the whatever this car pipeline, all these things. We have all these little, this is yours, this is mine, this is what I do, this is what you do, and we're all connected up and we're hooked up and we've got a relationship, and we say this is it, this is perfect. It may not be, but it seems to be okay enough, and we've limited ourselves and defined ourselves, and we have a relationship. But then circumstances happen. The things change. The universe is a capricious thing, and things change. You change. The other changes. Everything changes about you. All the things that the pipelines are built on top of are built upon shifting sands. The money changes. The abilities change. The looks change. The sex changes. All these other things change. All these things change, and each one by one, those pipelines, like physical connections, like real pipes in the ground, start to corrode. They start to leak. They start to break. And you say, well, I'll just make new pipelines. But people don't. The pipelines get broken, and their relationship is shattered by that, by circumstance, because it was never an actual being to being. It was a bunch of things, a bunch of boxes, a bunch of pipes. But the universe demands permanence, or rather, the universe will take everything away that you think is permanent, if you want to last in the universe, you can't depend on anything that's in the physical or anything that's in the universe itself to remain the same. If you want to be in relationship with the other, it can have no foundation in the money or the car or the looks or those things might initially be part of the relationship, but unless it very quickly matures to a being, to something which is beyond this physical and beyond these pipes. Let me put it in a different way. When we were with Christopher and all the kids in the cancer wards in Memorial Sloan Kettering, all the boxes that had defined them up to that point were suddenly gone. They were this child and this one was pretty and this one was smart and this one was going to be a fireman or whatever. All those boxes were suddenly gone. And they were put in a big box. The big box was, you have cancer box. And you're a kid who has cancer, and this is the box you belong in. And initially, probably all of them ended up thrown in that box and saying, oh God, I'm a kid with cancer. But they realized that box, very quickly realized that box didn't fit, didn't really make them who they were. The box that the world wanted to throw them in was that cancer box. And every one of them, or at least the ones that were able to endure and come through the other side, whether they lived or died, didn't really matter, but come through the other side and endure, climbed out of that box and said, no, I am far vaster. I don't fit in this box. This is not who I am. I am a being, I'm a presence. I am not defined by this box. That's what the world demands. If you want permanence, you can't allow the boxes. The boxes will all corrode. They'll all be limiting. They'll all be something which people either throw you in or you throw yourself in, whether it's relationship or your own self. If you allow yourself to be defined by that box, the cancer box, or any other box, it won't fit. It'll break down. It'll become a tomb if you let it be. If you let it be.
Right. If you believe that that's the only thing you are is your disease.
Right. Every one of these things, primarily as a function or a role, the role of I'm a diseased cancer box person is the role people want to throw you in and feel sorry for you about. You got to climb right out of that role. You got to say, I don't fit in this. I am a conscious presence who temporarily, currently, in this particular moment of time, has a disease or a malady, but it's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm temporarily poor, temporarily rich, temporarily handsome, temporarily whatever it is. In the temporal, as you draw your line, all kinds of things happen. It's the fool running through the tarot cards. Yes, you've got the whole vast world and every pratfall in front of you, every circumstance is going to happen to you. You're going to be rich, you're going to be poor, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. That's why the wedding vows have all those things, or at least partially all those things in there. Richard Porter, sickness, health. Because none of that's supposed to matter. Get out of all those boxes. You can lose every one of them, or you can gain one and lose another one. You can get in the cancer box and get out of the cancer box, but it's still just you the being.
Yes. And whether or not you accept the fact that there is so much more to you. Because for some people, they're afraid to go deep.
Mm.
And they would rather say, well, no, this is what I was told. I'm this, and this is what I got to cling to.
It's what I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. But if you look internally, there is a vastness there. And why people don't do that is usually because the soul's talking to them and saying, you know what? We're not happy with where you put us. We're stuck in this crazy little space you've shoved us all into. And we want out. So just allowing yourself to look internally and say, okay, let me come on out and let's talk. Let's have a conversation with yourself and give up defining yourself. Just let it speak to you. Let your heart speak to you.
You said something really important, though. I know we're coming near the end, but people get comfortable and they define those boxes, and then when they start to do what you're saying to do, they feel afraid. They feel like they're being destroyed. The ego loves those boxes. It loves them, because it fits in them, and they're comfortable, and it says, I know who I am, and I know who you are. And it's really talking to yourself. When you start to be a vast conscious presence and not a function and not a role, the ego gets really squirrely. Because it's like, you don't know who you are anymore. Right. Well, I'm not you, though. I don't know who I am. I don't need to know who I am. What I need to do is be who I am.
Correct. Not distracted. And not limited.
Not defined.
The yearning for freedom it emanates from the soul. Because the soul is vast. And I keep using the word vast, but what other word can you use? It is beyond anything that you can grasp. It's beyond any mental construct that you may put together.
Beyond all definition.
So that is looking for expression in this world. And this world doesn't want that because it's too scary for everybody else. So they want to control and let that be narrowed down into something that can be manipulated.
Don't let them do it.
No, do not. Because there's an amazing gift within inside of you.
Right. And when you do that, when you witness to that, you will find that others initially will try and shut you down, but you'll find far more that will see that and take heart and be vast with you.
Yes, to be brave. Be brave to be a true human being. And we've reached the end of our hour.
I don't accept that definition.
So, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.